Everyone, if you'd like to settle down.
Thank you very much. Good out live.
Thank you. Welcome to this extraordinary meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council. My name is Councillor Peter Sanford and I am the Chair of the Council. My Vice Chair is Councillor Eileen Wilson. As usual, this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. We also allow recording, filming and photography so long as the meeting is not disrupted. Please ensure your phone is on silent. You should keep your microphone switched off until you are invited to speak. If participating remotely, when you are invited to address the meeting, please make sure the microphone and camera are switched on. And then, when you have finished addressing the meeting, please turn your microphone and camera off. Members attending remotely should indicate their wish to speak through a chat message in the Teams meeting. Those present in the chamber should indicate their wish to speak by raising their hand. I will ask the Vice Chair to note the order of speakers. The meeting is quorate, so we will proceed. Item 1, apologies. Are there any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We have apologies from Councillors Ariel Khan, Drew, Leeming, Smith, Atkins, Osborne, Rippeth and Van der Weyer, and I can see that Councillor Henry Batchelor is online.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Apologies from Councillor Lena Nieto as well. She's been held up.
Thank you. Item 2, declarations of interest. Do any members have any interest to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda? If an interest becomes apparent later in the meeting, please raise it at that point. I do not see anyone offering declarations of interest. Thank you. Item 3. We come to the substantive item on this evening's agenda. A requisition has been lodged by 10 members of South Cambridgeshire District Council requiring that an extraordinary meeting be held to debate the letter regarding the 4-day week recently received by the Leader of the Council from the Secretary of State. The formal requisition must list the items to be debated at the meeting, and members can find those at paragraph 6 of the Officer Report. The letter from the Secretary of State and the Leader's response are at Appendix A and B respectively. The requisition did not seek a decision from Council, so I do not expect any vote will be needed. The recommendation in the report is that we debate the matters raised in the requisition. Can I invite members to speak on the items in the requisition? Councillor Cohn.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to make an amendment to the recommendations that we have on the order papers, which I've circulated with DEM services, if that could be displayed. I thought it would be best to do that right from the beginning.
Absolutely. DEM services, can you put it on the screen? Do you have a seconder for this amendment? Okay. I see Councillor Editon also raised her hand, but
Do you want to second it, sir? Or Sue's have to second it?
yeah, whichever you wish to second.
Sorry, I was indicating that I would like to speak at some point.
Okay. I think the amendment takes precedent. Obviously, you may be speaking on something that's changed.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yeah.
Am I still being asked to second then?
No.
No, good. Thank you.
Are you happy for me to speak, Chair, to the recommendation?
Yes, give everyone a moment
Yeah,
to read
sorry,
it.
yeah.
So,
Can I request that we seek an adjournment, please, because this is new to us. It's only just been introduced. And I'd like to make sure that we question and answer the validity of this process.
I think that's appropriate. Can we take a short intermission, please? Thank you. So, Councillor Cone, we see your amendment in front of us. Do you have a seconder?
I do, Chair.
Councillor Williams. Councillor Milnes, is this amendment acceptable?
No, we've tried to negotiate a middle ground on this without success, so we won't be accepting this amendment. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, in which case we'll proceed to the debate, followed by a vote on the amendment. Who would like to speak first on the amendment? Councillor Williams. Yep. Getting ahead of myself. I
That's
apologise.
okay. That's
We'll
okay.
forgive you, Chair, we'll help.
Thank you for that, Chair. So I'll just be brief. I think what we have in front of us is incredibly reasonable. It's what the public would expect. It's transparent, and you know, I don't think there's anything there that most people wouldn't disagree with. To be honest, I think it's very reasonable. We took advice on it before the meeting, and I think that's a reasonable amendment to this recommendation that will ensure transparency for us, this council, and the public.
Thank you. Do you want to reserve your right to speak or speak now, Councillor
I'll
Williams?
speak now, if that's okay, Chair, on the amendment.
Go ahead.
You know, we have to accept, for whatever reasons, there is a breakdown of trust with the public, and it's been said that's in local government in general and in politics. You can laugh, but the reality is, in politics, local or national, there is a breakdown of trust. Providing more transparency is really key and important into trying to rebuild that trust. What this amendment does is seeks to ensure that how this council is being represented when it comes to government on whatever your views on the 4-day week, one of the most controversial things that the council has done and that people have investment in, is held, you know, across information provided across the board. It's not unreasonable at all. The things that were suggested would take out that transparency, which is why we didn't accept it. I don't think, if you took this in any other world, to have meetings with things that are going to make a big decision and influence how people's lives are being supported in South Cambridgeshire, to just share with those who are, all of those who are elected to represent them, what it is that's being said, how the council's being represented, and any information that's been used to be relied on. It's as simple as that. We could have gone further, but we haven't. We've tried to be reasonable. And I'll be surprised to hear anything valid against this, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bhattacharya, you wish to speak?
Thank you. I have a small quick question. Keeping the things transparent to the public and the council, I thought this is our ethical, moral responsibility. So, do you think does it mean it is also a debatable thing now? Like going with our ethics and morals and the formal thing.
Apologies. Who was that correct question directed to? You have a question, but you have to ask a question of a person.
It's directed to those that refuse this amendment.
Deputy Leader, I'm not sure what the question was myself, but...
I'm sorry, Chair, I didn't hear the question. Was there one?
I didn't see it.
Chair, if I may be able to assist the Deputy Leader with what the question was. I think it was very clear that we all meant to be here to stand for democracy and transparency in democracy. So why would anybody go against this? That's a summary of what Councillor Bhattacharya was saying. If you're here for transparency, why would you not want to be transparent?
Thank you. I'll cover that in my response.
Thank you. Councillor Lentle.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be voting for this amendment, and I can't imagine why anyone wouldn't. One of the reasons that the 4-day week hasn't been the success it could have been is a failure to engage with stakeholders. And we've talked ad nauseum about not engaging with the public, and we've talked about the fact that we haven't engaged properly with the Sir Humphreys in Whitehall.
Point of order, is this to do with the amendment, or is this to do with the main debate?
Chair, point of order. Understanding order is a point of order. You need to reference the part of the Constitution that you require that the Deputy Leader has not done so.
Maybe I should have asked for clarity then.
Councillor Milnes, the reason that this has not been the success it could have been is a failure to engage with stakeholders. This is a meeting with perhaps one of the most significant groups of stakeholders on the landscape, which is our friends and colleagues in Whitehall. The fact that this meeting is happening after the 4-day week was introduced rather than before, and the fact that we haven't talked about what Whitehall's views, about what may well be one of the most significant changes to the way that public servants, civil servants are paid and funded. Failure to do stakeholder engagement is why projects like this one, ambitious projects like this one, don't succeed. And the fact that the senior leadership team at this council doesn't understand stakeholder engagement is very disappointing. And the fact they don't seem to understand the role of transparency is very worrying. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Richard Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just speak briefly, just to say, obviously, I'll be supporting the amendment. I think it's a shame that it's not been accepted. I would have thought that I think the leadership feels it has a good case to make here, and I think why it wouldn't take the opportunity to come back and make that case again, I don't quite understand. But more seriously, you know, that letter, without going into the main debate, it does represent a very significant shift in policy from the government. You know, the leader quoted what the previous Secretary of State said, and we've all seen what the current Secretary of State said. There's a big shift in government policy, which could have very significant implications for this council. Who's to know if the government doesn't firm up its policy to say that, you know, it will cut funding to councils that have a 4-day week. Who knows? So I think given the significance of that policy shift, it would be entirely appropriate for the leader to come back and report to the council on the outcome of that meeting, because that meeting can have very significant implications for us and our residents. So I would be interested to know what the objection is to this, and actually whether the leadership here today might undertake to bring their own amendment forward, which might excise the little bits of this they don't agree with, because from hearing the conversation earlier, it seems that there was some attempt at discussion, but I think something along these lines would be very welcome.
Thank you. Councillor Tom Bygott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So I'm also supporting this amendment, and it seems very clear to me that this is a perfectly reasonable thing for us to ask for. Our residents will be very greatly impacted if the government indicates that they're not willing to support the current 4-day week. And my question really is, what is it about providing minutes to a meeting does the leadership of the council regard as so difficult to promise? What could possibly be said in that meeting that they don't want to be in the public domain? And what is it in the public interest not to make that information available? You know, what public justification could there possibly be for not providing the minutes of such an important meeting? Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other requests to speak, so I'll ask Councillor Milnes to respond.
Thank you, Chair. So briefly, we did offer a wording with certain parts of it excised, but it wasn't accepted by your proposer or seconder, so we failed to do that. We don't have any fundamental problem with transparency of these discussions, but what we do have is a requirement to go into that meeting and be able to discuss free and have a frank discussion with the ministry. You'll understand that actually the letter from the Secretary of State came unannounced. In fact, I think it was possible to read the letter in the Telegraph before it came to the leader. So there are issues that we would need to be careful about. And in that letter, I believe the Secretary of State references the fact that we are autonomous in these matters. And you'll see from the leader's response by letter, the response is what it is, and that's the two letters that will frame the basis of the discussion that we'll have. And then we'll come out of that, and we're more than happy to tell the council what the nature of that discussion was. There'll no doubt be some sort of response from the ministry, which will obviously be shared. So there's no issue over transparency, and I can't accept the amendment as is, I'm sorry to say. So if we could move to a vote, Chair, I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Point of information is that the proposed amendment, because it included removing materials and minutes, negated the amendment in our view for transparency of what was it that was being removed. And the Deputy Leader may have looked at me when he said to the Telegraph, but I received it well after that, so it wasn't me if that was the imposition.
So it certainly wasn't my intention, though.
Thank you. Would someone like to move that we move to a vote? Councillor Milnes and Councillor Martin Khan seconds. So, Dem Services, could you set up a vote? Obviously, it'd be green to vote for the amendment, red to vote against, and yellow, whatever colour that is, to abstain. Okay, we have 30 votes. Is that everyone? Okay, thank you. That's 9 for, 21 against. The amendment falls. Okay. Just to clarify the previous discussions, does the Deputy Leader feel we need a different amendment as discussed, or do we just move on to discussing the substantive matter? Thank you. Okay, we're now moving to discussion on the 3 points listed in the requisition. As noted previously, they're in paragraph 6 of the officer's report. Who would like to speak first? Councillor Cohn.
Thank you, Chair. I'll go. So I just wanted to pull a few bits out of the letter. The first thing was I was very pleased that the Secretary of State refers to the 4-day working week as we refer to it as a 4-day working week for 5 days worth of pay, which is how we should always refer to this, as the Secretary of State has referred to it in his letter, because that's exactly what it is. The second point I would like to make is that in the third paragraph from the end of the letter, it states that the independent report shows performance decline in. I would hope that the leader takes back a view that many people in this council do not think it was an independent report, and in my view, it was far from independent. In fact, we'd have found it difficult to pick someone that was, less biased than the person we picked to do this report, in my view. So I think that absolutely needs to be taken back to the government, because if we're calling it an independent report, that needs to be taken back and corrected, because in my view, it was not.
Thank you. Councillor Ellington, at last.
Thank you, Chair. Has the administration considered the implications for our residents of South Cambs of failing to comply with the government policy as stated in the letter from Steve Reed on October the 28th, 2024? The government has many ways of applying pressure. Points such as grants, development, influence, which could be used against South Cambs and are very difficult to fight against unless you look at the source. And I would suggest that I would like to know what the administration has thought about in terms of retaliation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellington. Next, Councillor Tom Bygott, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So the Secretary of State has made it unambiguously clear that he's concerned about potential declining performance. Will the Council continue to collect performance data of the kind that it did when the previous government indicated its concerns? And if so, what kinds of data is it going to collect? And what would the acceptable level of performance be above which the 4-day week would continue? Secondly, how does the leadership intend to respond to the Secretary of State's position? And on what basis will you justify continuing a model that central government has explicitly challenged? It is important for this Council to understand the substance of the reply you propose to send, particularly if you plan to contest points that have been set out in formal correspondence. Will the draft response be made available to members before submission? And will Cabinet accept that a ministerial letter of this kind carries practical implications for the Council's relationship with government departments and other oversight bodies? Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're collecting quite a few questions. Would someone like to, administration like to respond to some of those points?
I think that we can respond just when we've finished hearing all the points.
As
Thank you, Chair.
long as you're noting them. Thank you. Councillor Lentle, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, when you're embarking on a big project, you need to think about the stakeholders you're dealing with. And Steve Reed isn't his predecessor or his predecessor's predecessor. Steve Reed is a former local authority leader. When he took over Lambeth, that was a council that was rated poorly, 1 star from the Audit Commission. Under his leadership by 2009, it had improved to a 3-star rating. Steve Reed oversaw a freezing of council tax for several years. This is even while he was doing it as services were being improved. He turned around Lambeth Children's Services from being among the worst rated to being judged outstanding in every category. In youth violent crime, he took a public health approach. Again, he is not his Conservative predecessor at all. He is somebody who understands the world of local government, local administration, somebody who had a consultation to make Lambeth a more cooperative council, giving more control to local people over how services are run. He built 6 new schools. He got the streets cleaner than they had ever been. When Steve Reed turns around and says that a local authority is doing something that does not make sense to him, we should be listening, especially given that, with all due respect to ourselves, Lambeth is a slightly more complicated community than, good old South Cambridgeshire. The problem from the start with this project is that it's generally a good idea done in entirely the wrong way and for entirely the wrong reasons. And instead of doing what strong and capable and authentic and, competent people do, which is to say, yep, we got that a bit wrong, let's tighten that up. Yep, we got that a little bit, we're not even listening, right? This is the problem. The senior leadership team, elected and unelected at this council, don't listen. It means they can't learn. It means they cannot absorb the lessons of everyday life. And it's why this policy has not gone very well. This is a policy that a Labour administration with a massive mandate and a massive majority should be looking to adopt and should be looking to, seed across the country. But every time I've spoken to anyone from outside of, say, South Cambridgeshire, someone who hasn't drunk the Kool-Aid, people in Edinburgh and down south, they all look at us and say, well, of course you can't possibly pay 5 days full-time work for full-time wages for part-time work. That's completely unsustainable. It's really important to engage with stakeholders properly, and understanding that Steve Reed is serious people, that would really help here. So I hope that when this council does go down to Whitehall, we're going to go with with the 2 ears and 1 mouth that God gave us all. 2 ears, 1 mouth. Why? Because we should do more listening than talking. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor John Williams, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think we should go back to where we were 3 years ago when we were in a position where we couldn't fill posts, we couldn't retain people, and our budget was being overspent, considerably overspent, because we were recruiting agency staff to cover unfilled posts. Now, we started off, you probably remember the first trial of the 4-day week, first trial of the 4-day week back in January 2022, when we looked at improving recruitment, retention, and eliminating that overspend on our budget, which was meaning that we were having to direct money away from other services in order to fund agency staff. And there were the 3 main reasons why we trialled a 4-day week. Just over nearly 3 years on from that, the latest set of key performance indicators, which the party opposite have seen, which were published last week and looked at by scrutiny, which is chaired by a member of the opposition, showed that in all those areas we had improved. Our retention had improved, our recruitment had gone up from an average of 5 applicants per post to 15 applicants per post, and our overspend back in Q1 in 2022, which was 247,000, was now down to 32,000 in Q1 this year. So all the objectives have been met, and all the and going forward, there is no suggestion that we will not continue to maintain that trend. That's meant that instead of, for example, on planning, having to rely on agency staff, and that discontinuity of planning officers, for example, has finished. All our posts in development control are now filled by permanent staff where they weren't before. Some senior planning management posts have now been filled, which they weren't before. On our waste, and as a result of that, by the way, we are now an award-winning planning authority. On waste, money that we had, at one point, we were 30 drivers and loaders short, and now we're back to having, near full establishment on our waste services, again saving us money, saving us, for example, not just on agency staff, but on overtime as well. So all those objectives that we set ourselves 3 years ago are now being met. And so the four-day week trial has been an enormous success. And also a spin-off from that has been the morale of our staff has improved. Our staff are looking for better ways to, the output is the most important in this council, so they're looking at better ways to achieve that output.
Councillor Williams,
Within
draw your
in less time. And if you're delivering what you should be paid to deliver in 4 days, then you deserve to be paid the full salary of 5 days. And as I say, so far as we're concerned, the 4-day week has been a success, and that is what we will be telling the civil service servants who will be visiting us next week.
Thank you. Councillor Sally Ann Hart, please.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep it very short. Just firstly, I'd just like to thank the leader for the speedy response to the Secretary of State. And secondly, I'd just like to record my surprise, really, that this meeting is taking place, bearing in mind that the leader has already made clear that she's happy to meet with civil servants. And when she meets with them, the leader will be able to build on the information already shared regarding those 3 KPIs that were highlighted. Over the time that I've been on this council, I've sat on both scrutiny and overview and employment and staffing committees, and I still sit on employment and staffing. And just like to remind all members that those KPIs are regularly reviewed. And I think we've often commented on the potentially over-ambitious nature of those 3 KPIs that were mentioned in the letter. And I believe that this council continues to collect the copious amount of data requested by the previous government, and that this is also publicly available. So what I'm left wondering is how much more we or any council could do to reassure our residents that we are an evidence-driven, responsible council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Next, Councillor Richard Williams, please.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to start by addressing the point that Councillor John Williams, or some of the comments he made, repeatedly referring to spend on agency staff. You would think, listening to the administration, that this council no longer employed any agency staff. Let me just remind you of the figures. The spend on agency staff in 2022-2023 was 2.4 million, 2.5 million in 2023-24, 2.2 million in 24-25. It is not the case that you've miraculously eliminated agency staff. You're actually spending more for most of the trial on agency staff than you were in the year before the trial started. It's complete fiction to pretend that somehow agency staff have been eliminated from this council. We're spending millions on agency staff. It hasn't really made that much difference. Yes, the particular posts have changed, and you've got a very clever mechanism of picking on a couple of posts that happen to be free in the summer of 2022 and saying, well, because we filled those ones, we've got this massive saving, ignoring all the other all the other posts that have become vacant subsequently and are now filled with agency staff. So, I mean, I really can't believe that you keep saying that. It really isn't. If you know, I can think of better arguments actually. That is not a good one, because you are spending millions in agency staff. You always were, and you still are. On the subject of the letter, as I said earlier, you know, this letter represents a really significant shift in policy from the previous Secretary of State to this Secretary of State. We've gone from the previous Secretary of State saying she doesn't think councils, you know, it's not the government's policy to roll it out everywhere, to now a clear statement that the council should not be offering full-time pay for part-time work. So what contingency planning has the administration done, or is the administration doing, in terms of the sanctions that could potentially be applied to us? I think it's really important that the administration is thinking about what the consequences of that very significant and very clear shift in government policy could be for this council. And also, I think the letter that the Secretary of State sent to the leader made, you know, a number of important points. But what the Secretary of State was seeking assurances about was that the arrangements that the council has in place for considering the impacts of the policy and the value for money that residents are being delivered. So what the Secretary of State wants to know is, what is this council doing to monitor the continuing effects of that policy, and what is it doing to assess value for money? Now, the leader's response does not address those points. The leader's response mostly sticks to the KPIs on housing, which, to be fair, the leader did, the Secretary of State did reference, and it's correct for the leader to make her point on that. but the leader ignores the broader points that the Secretary of State is making. And I think if this council is to avoid potential punitive measures, it needs to go to the Secretary of State with an answer to those questions. What is your analysis of what measures have you got in place to ensure value for money, and what is your ongoing monitoring? I don't think just referring to KPIs will cut the mustard. I think much more significant response is needed, which is why I think it's really important that the leader comes back and reports to the council in detail what she actually says to the Secretary of State and what the view is in terms of potential sanctions and what steps the administration is taking to guard against that. That's just what any prudent administration, I think, should do when it gets a letter like this.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Bradnam, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, like Councillor Sally Ann Hart, I sit on both the Employment and Staffing Committee and the Scrutiny and Overview, and I have attended many Cabinet meetings on behalf of Scrutiny and Overview. And what I have observed about how this trial was initiated, actually prepared for, then initiated, and then brought through, is that it has been absolutely driven by the data that we set up and agreed right at the very beginning of the trial. So that takes us back to September 2023. If you remember, in that 3-month period before Christmas, a preparation period happened in order to prepare officers and colleagues with how this was going to come ahead. And what was amazing at that time was the generation of ideas that came from our colleagues, the officers, of how they could make sure that the work that they would be doing would continue to be done in a proper and timely way. And then in January, we started that initial 3-month trial, and then from then on, it progressed to a 12-month trial. All of that was done on the basis of data and reviewing those KPIs as we went along. And while some people said, oh, you ought to change the KPIs, we said, no, these are the ones that we'd agreed right at the outset, and we wanted to continue recording those same KPIs all the way through so that we wouldn't have any bias in the data. You know, my feeling is that this has been done in the most measured and careful way, whilst also delivering 160, whatever it was, pieces of data to the government, which have not, as far as we know, been responded to by the government in any way. So, you know, my feeling this has been done in a very careful way. We have done a consultation with our residents, and I can't see any evidence to suggest that the work of the council or the response that we give to our residents has been any worse than it was at the beginning. And in fact, in many cases, it's been improved. We've had longer hours in the contact centre. And, you know, there's all sorts of ways that officers have actually improved their working process in order that they can get their 5 days work done in the 4 days of the trial. So I think this is absolutely sensible. I cannot imagine why this has been brought to council. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Toomey Hawkins, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think, as we know, local government is the most direct and impactful form of governance. It's about problem solving. And frankly, that's what we have been trying to do. And I think with the 4-day week is what we've done. Our focus is on delivering high quality services for our residents. And I mean, if I can just take us back to, many of us might not be here, but there are some of us across, across from me who were. Prior to 2018, our planning service had just avoided being designated it was that bad. 2018, the two services were merged, we get the joint service. We went from that to we're now being award-winning planning service. And we have MHCLG encouraging us to apply for funds and granting us funds to do PropTech work, which we are now one of the trailblazers in doing that. We've come quite a long way. Our DM service is fully staffed. And when I say this, when I visit other councils, they look at me as if, really? How can? But the 4-day week has helped. Our officers are dedicated. They're ambitious for making our planning service one of the best in the country. What else can I say? Our performance is good. 4-day week has helped. And frankly, I can't understand why this manufactured outrage is just carrying on. This meeting has been called, in my view, too early, because the meeting with government still hasn't happened. We've said a lot about 4-day week in the past. And as far as I can tell, our KPIs, and I know people are saying, don't focus on the KPIs, but we have to focus on the KPIs because that's what really shows what the performance is like. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any other requests to speak on these items? Is that your finger, Mr. Milne? Councillor Milnes? Please go ahead. Absolutely. Apologies, Councillor Batchelor, if we overlooked you. Please go ahead.
Very much, Chair. Just coming back to these KPIs yet again, the Minister and others seem determined not to understand the situation with them. Constantly we highlight these 3 KPIs, which in 2 cases are very minor, reduction in performance, and the other, the actual KPI, was irrelevant since it was referring to a work pattern that no longer existed. The real point here is that the performance of the housing service is and always has been amongst the best in the country. It still is. All of these, including the 3 KPIs mentioned by yet another minister, are amongst the top quartile in terms of performance nationally. So they are irrelevant. We are, as has been said already, we are performing. The 4-day week has contributed, and really there is little point in this today.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Khan, please.
I'm going to be very brief, but I think the concern expressed by those concerned about this don't understand any basic statistics. Normally there will be natural variation and some things will improve, some things will decline. You have a situation, you have 17 KPIs and 2 are indicated as slight decline. That, if you look at it from a statistical basis, would suggest that the overall performance is in fact quite significantly increasing. You would expect them to be pretty well balanced. So compared with between the increase or static and the declines. So really the evidence statistically suggests that there's a significant improvement. And I really think that they want to, I think you really want to take that into account.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams, did you want to contribute to this debate? Are you happy with that?
I'm more happy for the leader of the opposition to sum up. I'll be able to respond. I'll be able to respond.
You beat me to it, Brian. Go on, you go ahead.
Good. It's What's known as a standoff.
That's fine.
Okay, if you don't want to
Let's
speak.
give the Leader of the Opposition a chance to wrap up. So, it's like Groundhog Day, isn't it? We're back having the same. Oh, I thought you were trying to indicate. I understand, thank you. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your hand in the air motion. Oh no, movement. So, yeah, I was just about to compare it with an old movie that you accidentally come and find you've already watched it, or like Groundhog Day. Here we go again. I could talk about the performance of the council, which has been pretty exemplary, and certainly by contrast. I mean, if I mention Birmingham, Nottingham, and 114, Woking just been given a £500 million bailout. And how do we perform? Absolutely excellently. The 4-day week has been a huge success for us in terms of all the things that my colleagues have brought notice to. So why are we having a meeting with the ministry? Well, we want to understand why the Secretary of State has made the statement and written his letter. And just out of interest, he's not the only Secretary of State that was a leader in the local authority. The previous government had Simon Hoare latterly in post. He was a local authority leader. So he knew the environment. Didn't stop him expressing his opinion about the 4-day week. And we continue to make our case for it. It's fine. There's reference in the letter to affordability. We've heard from housing portfolio holder how well our new council house building is going. We're one of the top performers in the country, along with our neighbours in Cambridge City. You know, we're doing a job that most people in local government would be hugely enviable of, and we're very proud of our reputation as a leader and innovators in this space. Thank you.
Switch your mic off. Thank you, Councillor Milnes. Councillor Heather Williams, would you like to wrap up, please?
Thank you. So I'll try to go through some things. The agency, I think, has been covered, but I think also we've got to remember it was always being judged on 21 hard-to-fill roles, not the whole council. And interestingly, when the lead member for finance gave the savings, he didn't say about the extra costs that were required. And once you factor that in and the extra costs coming up, that'll be different. Waste was mentioned. We've all seen the Cambridge Independent or Cambridge News showing that our missed bins is not something that we should be proud of at the moment. Enormous success on the criterias, the KPIs, again and again and again. And this is why we want this meeting. The Secretary of State has seen the KPIs. He knows what the KPIs are. That seems to have been the biggest defence right now. And he's not happy, and he still doesn't think it's a good idea. Now, it is a very strange feeling, Chair, to be honest, as a Conservative councillor, to be agreeing with the Labour Secretary of State and to have, it seems to be there's so many differences, but actually both Conservative and Labour are agreed on this issue in the current policy. And it was said about, they're the KPIs that you set, and then originally it was constantly focusing on KPIs. That is the metric that you chose to do. So you can say they're irrelevant. If that's the case, why did you choose them? Data. Data's a really interesting one for me because the reason it's publicly available is because on this side we fought tooth and nail and I refused to have information given to me that I wasn't allowed to share with the public. And once we legally had proven that we had a right to see the information and it was given to me, then the council decided to share that information. So when it comes to transparency, things like that, for us, that's what's concerning, and that's why we brought that amendment, because we care about transparency. We know we're going to disagree on it, okay? That's democracy. Healthy democracy, actually, is to have disagreement. but we should all have access to information. We should all have access to that data. When it comes to high quality services, it depends on what you want to do. Do you want to look at the KPIs or do you want to look at the responses to the residents' survey? The resident survey and consultation was put forward earlier. Residents across the board are not happy with what they receive now compared to before. That was the raw data results served. And I want to be very, very clear that that is not officers' fault. That is the administration, the political administration's fault. So any misguidings there, officers who wouldn't take what they're being offered, the issue is it is that offered in the first place. And I think that's what Steve Reed is making very, very clear. And I have to say, I am very worried about how the leader, obviously she's not here today to give her answers. Hopefully we will hear from her at some point. It's important we had that meeting to understand. You can try and wind me up as much as you want, Councillor Williams. I didn't do that to you. I showed you some common courtesy. It'd be nice if you did the same. At the end of the day, how this council is represented to the Secretary of State, who holds the purse strings, as has been said, is really important. And we do not want to see our residents punished because of the political experiment that has gone on here. And that's what it is. Residents aren't happy, nor are we. And I very much hope that you go with more than just KPI data, because he's already got that and he's not happy.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. That concludes the debate on this item and brings this extraordinary meeting to a close. Thank you all. Aaron, take us offline, please.